Welcome. What is up? Welcome to the Mixer, episode 103. I am RC, your host, joined by my dude here, Jeff. Jeff, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's day two of the Mixer in this, opening week.
Yeah.
I try to think of a catchy name for this opening week. I'm just calling it the prologue, the Mixer
Okay.
prologue. I thought about giving it the tagline. We're in camp, we're in mini camp. Camp Snoopy, but I couldn't really land on anything. So, this is me addressing my inability to come up with a catchy tagline. But here we are. Opening week. Speaking of opening weeks, we're talking MLB today for this episode, and the MLB sounds like it's going to happen. So let's get talking about it. First, I wanted to talk about our experience in baseball in general. Let's start with you, Jeff. I know you played some baseball, but talk about your fandom, your love for baseball, and any fantasy experience you have with baseball.
Okay. So I grew up playing baseball first. I think I probably started t-ball when I was like 4. Played that through, I played through juniors. I even played seniors just for fun with some friends who didn't play in high school when I was like 15, 16 years old. Played a little bit of travel baseball, but never got heavy into that because I played football and I was good at that. And travel baseball and football didn't really mix because travel baseball is really big in the summer. And that's when it's when you really get to practice for football, right?
Yeah.
So those didn't really mix, but my stepdad is a baseball coach and has been for a long time. And he coaches in he coaches a little bit now, but when I was younger, he coached in some pretty good leagues. There's one, it's called the Connie Mack League up in Irvine. It's wood bats. It was like really 17, 18, 19-year-olds, guys that were like seniors in college or in high school. And
Yeah.
he would take me up there when he needed a player when I was like 14, 15, 16. So that was like great experience. I played in high school. It was like 2.5 years on varsity. Half my sophomore year was on varsity because the coach thought I was way more into football, which in reality I probably was. So he didn't want me to like be on varsity and then have to leave during like CIF playoffs because of like football practice and stuff. So once I convinced him I was down to play, he brought me up. Other than that, I stopped after I graduated high school because I went to college to play football.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got back into coaching with my stepdad, now my uncle, and just coach now. As far as fandom, growing up, I was a big fan of Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez, by far my 2 favorite players growing up, and somehow became a Yankee fan. Don't really know how that happened or where that originated. The only thing I know is that like for my whole life I've been a Yankee fan. I'm assuming it's because they were probably on TV all the time when I was little, and they were probably one of the few teams that was on TV all the time.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of gravitated there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
I think
I'm
you just
also pro
enjoy
steroids.
embracing. I think you just nice. Sorry to talk over that part,
You're
but I
good.
think you just enjoy embracing the heel role. Um,
A little bit, yeah.
but you're okay. So you're pro steroids. Any reason behind that, or is
Yeah,
it?
so this is my reasoning. I've played sports at a decently high level, right? And I've played with some guys that were, D1. I played with some guys that went pro. Whether you want to believe it or not, like 80% of these guys are using something anyway.
Uh-huh.
So just legalize it and just educate them on this is my feeling. Legalize it, educate them on the harmfulness, the like pros and cons of what they may or may not be using,
Yeah.
and then let them decide for themselves. I just think that, you know, it becomes it's more dangerous when people are having to go through back channels, or they're not, they're having to be sneaky about things,
Uh-huh.
right? And the other thing too is like one of the biggest things that, steroids or performance enhancing drugs help with is recovery.
Yeah.
And we always want guys to play more games. We want them to play harder. We want them to go all out all the time. And if you've played sports at any level, you know that like you can't really do that, right? Like baseball wants guys to play 162 games in like roughly 6 months,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just
A grind.
yeah. And you want these guys to do it. You want them to perform at their best. Well, let them have the best stuff so they can perform at their best.
Yeah.
Also, like to keep people out of the Hall of Fame, which is supposed to be a museum to your game because of they took a substance, when you have people that are remembered very fondly who talk about taking speed pretty openly.
Right.
Um,
Right.
it just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it's interesting where the lines are drawn. You know, yeah, the old timers talking about the greenies that used to be in basically candy jars in the locker room. It's amazing that, and that was commonly known, but they're in. So yeah, it's interesting where the line is drawn as far as who gets in the Hall of Fame and who doesn't. There will be plenty of opportunity to talk about that sort of thing. I'm sure baseball will always be a topic for us. Um, I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah.
get
Also, I run a very successful uh, baseball fantasy league.
right,
Uh,
right.
that is currently on hold, even though we have an expected, start date.
Uh,
It's still tentative until it actually happens, right?
yeah, yeah. Maybe we could live broadcast that draft or something. And I was gonna talk to you about the format, but we can do that offline. I'm not sure if head to head will work in this shortened season.
Right.
Uh, Anywho, um, as far as my experience with baseball goes, it was my first. Well, I mean, I guess that you couldn't really say it's my first sport that I loved, because auto racing would technically be number one, but it's the first, I guess, major sport that I loved, and that love developed from playing little league, t-ball, and being in the backyard with my dad. Um, I played up and through what's it, junior ball,
Hmm.
and I did some pitching. I was pretty good. Made all-star teams. I had to go off to visit my mom in Ohio during the summers. So whenever summer ball started, I wasn't available. So that kind of inhibited um, developing it into something further.
Yeah.
But I always enjoyed it. And the Padres had their run in '98. I was a huge Sammy Sosa fan, and that developed from being on the Cubs in T-ball. Uh, I started following them, and then I got really into baseball cards. And there's this one Sammy Sosa baseball card that I don't know why, but being a young kid, like the colors of the Cubs pinstripe jersey with the red and blue and the way it looked on the card. I just thought it was like the coolest thing, the way
Yeah.
it looked. And anyway, so that made me a huge Sammy Sosa fan before he really broke out. I mean, he was hitting like, 20, 30 home runs before he had that one huge season. But I'm a Sammy Sosa hipster. I liked him before he was cool. So, um, and then yeah, my love for baseball kind of faded. Once I got into bike racing and lacrosse, I still followed baseball. Um,
Right.
the Padres kind of dropped off. Um, and when the Padres moved to Petco, that was a big change too. The games there aren't the same. I mean, Petco is awesome. The stadium itself is great, but the environment is unfortunately not as great. The fans aren't as great, but that's Southern California for you. But still kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Still a Padre fan at heart. The Cubs had their World Series win a few years ago, which
Right.
was awesome. Um, we've had a few wiffle ball matches, so that's been the extent of my involvement. In person as far as baseball goes lately. I know you got your beer league at the Sportsplex, which I mean, if any of the listeners on here are your friends, I would be very upset that you didn't mention. So watch out, you might get brushed back for not bringing that up. If is the Sportsplex even playing right now? Are they or is
Nope.
that on hiatus? That's on hiatus.
It is.
Oh man, what are all those guys with batting gloves and like 6, 7 bats doing right now with the sports packs closed? That
They're probably lost.
seems like it's their life, man. Just strolling up there, their cleats and
Dude,
their
I
pants.
know some of those guys would be there literally like 5 days a week. Like
Yeah.
they'd be there for like 3 hours a night, 5 days a week.
Oh man. Thoughts and prayers for the softball bros right now.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so that is my baseball. Still love it. It's kind of I'm frustrated with baseball in general, just the mishandling of it. The Padres have been irrelevant for a while. You got the evil empire teams like the Yankees, the Red Sox, all the everything that's going on with sign stealing. I'm sure that's going on with a lot of teams. It's not just the ones that have gotten caught. Um, but it just, I just think baseball in general needs some sort of retooling. I don't know what that is. I don't have the answer, but I think it's time to play around with the format. And I think the main thing would be reducing the number of games, or getting these guys jacked on roids.
Yeah.
um, so let's talk about it. Let's get into here. What's going on with baseball right now? So the reigning champs right now are the Washington Nationals. Shout out to Danny. The he got that win for whatever reason. He's a Nationals fan. They beat the Astros. We have returning MVPs: Mike Trout in the AL, Cody Bellinger in the NL. Cy Young winners last year were Jacob DeGrom and Justin Verlander, and of course, we have the whole sign stealing debacle with the Astros. Um, the Red Sox have been implicated. There was something with the Yankees recently, although I didn't read into that too much. So there's a few teams. The Astros were most prevalent in that. Do you have any thoughts on last MLB season, or what's going on with the sign stealing. Seems so long ago. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Not really. I think that you know, we have. I mean, it was going to be exciting to see how teams reacted to the Astros, who
Yeah,
got like a slap on the wrist for doing it.
right.
I mean, granted, a big slap on the wrist, but like it wasn't nearly as. Nobody that was actually involved really got punished,
Right.
right? And so, it was going to be exciting to see if anything happened, like do any of the, uh, you know, do any other teams throw at these guys? You know what I mean? Like stuff like that.
They were getting plunked in
Um,
spring training when
yeah,
there was a few games, and they were getting hit uh, at quite a regular rate. However, that's spring training. That's not live ball. So
right. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I just think in a lot of ways it's just going to fall by the wayside, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be anything. I don't think a whole lot's going to come out of it.
yeah, there are going to be other stories to talk about because the format's going to be so different, and we'll get into that. So right now, the I mean it's a changing environment. These are the Vegas odds right now. For World Series favorites, we have the Dodgers at plus 375. So I noticed I didn't explain this in the other ones. I guess I'm just operating on the assumption people know what these numbers mean. So Vegas sets lines based on $100 bet. Um, and so, like the Dodgers plus 375, that means if you bet $100, you win 375, which is the shortest odds. If you compare it to like the Cubs, who are 10th, $100 bet, if they win the World Series, would win you $2,200. So they have longer odds because the payout's bigger. So the Dodgers
Well,
are. Go ahead.
there's a little more that goes into it. So that like that explains like the plus 375, but like how do they get that is really determined by so they think the Dodgers will win X percent of the time,
Mhm.
and then they add a little bit to it, right? So if they think the Dodgers will win, 10% of the time, they might price it like 15 because so you can convert plus 375
Uh-huh.
into a percentage.
Right.
And then that is when you add up all teams in baseball, you'll get the total percentage, right? Which should equal out to 100, but never
Yeah.
will. Um, and then that's really where you'll see like how much Vegas is pretty much going to keep for themselves is
Yeah.
what's called the hold, right?
Yeah.
But just to give people an idea, like if we're going to explain it, those numbers come from a percentage that they think that's the chances of the Dodgers winning,
Yeah.
right? And then they convert that into if people pay $100 bet, they should get this return, right? But it's
Yeah.
never going to be, I don't want to say never. A lot of the favorites are always going to be underpriced, right? So
Uh-huh.
they're going to be expected to win more than they actually would be expected to win.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. There's quite a bit that goes into it. It's all fascinating, especially if you're into statistics and you talk about the hold. I know another contest is called like the rake.
yeah.
Uh, Basically the house always wins. It's going to be slanted, so they make some money. We're not I'm not a huge gambler, Jeff. I don't think you're a huge gambler, but it's fun, and also just looking at these numbers, gives you a good idea of what the public thinks, and Vegas does their research, so it's better than listening to the talking heads, if we're being honest, on the four letter network. So we have the Dodgers at plus 375, the Yankees next closest at plus 400, Astros at plus 650. The Braves are next at plus 1300. Nationals returning champs, all the way down in seventh at plus 1,800. The Cubs are in 10th at plus 2,200. And the Padres are in 20th. I didn't write down the number, but that's where they line up. I'm curious if these have changed. I put this together like about a week or so ago. I think even before it was announced that the league was gonna come back. But as far as division favorites, you have the Dodgers in the West, in the NL, Braves in the Central, Cardinals in the, I guess it's the Cardinals in the Central, the Braves in the East, and then in the AL it's the Yankees in the East, Astros in the West, and then Twins in the Central.
Yeah.
What do you see out of all that, Jeff, as far as World Series favorites, division favorites? Vegas got it right.
I think, I mean, it's pretty similar to last year. Baseball doesn't change a whole lot from year to year usually. I think it's surprising to see. I mean, the Nationals are much.
Lost.
Their
You
numbers.
cut out there for a second.
Sorry.
You cut out there for a second. You're back, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think like baseball doesn't change a lot from year to year a lot of times. You usually have one or two new teams that kind of surprise, but the Nationals, even though they're fifth in the consensus ratings in terms of their odds to win the World Series, you'd think a returning champ would be a little bit higher. They did lose Rendon, who was big offensively for them, stuff like that, and then other teams. You look at like the Yankees probably got a little bit better with Garrett Cole. And ideally they'll have some guys healthy. The Astros will still be really good, even though, you can say what you want about stealing signs and stuff like that. The guys still have to go out and hit. Now, granted, knowing what pitch comes makes it a lot easier, but you still got to do it.
Yeah.
The Dodgers will still probably be really good. To be honest, I think a lot of this makes sense, Yeah, I mean, there's not much here that I think is wrong. I know that we have some friends that probably think the Padres are a little bit low. They're probably discounting,
history.
Not that. I mean, that a little bit, but
experience.
One of the big factors.
Talent.
Well, no, one of the big factors in the Padres last year was Tatis was so good.
Yeah.
And he'd never been anywhere close to that good at any other level in professional baseball. So I think the people that put these together are probably looking at it like, well, Tatis probably isn't going to hit 330 again, right? He never hit, I don't think he hit above like 280 or 290 in the minors. So is someone else going to step up, like that kind of stuff? I think the Padres rotation could be pretty good depending on how it breaks out. But yeah, I mean, the rest of this, a lot of these teams are just bad teams. Baseball's really become, it's always kind of been like this, but it's really become like the haves and the have-nots in a lot of ways. You're either good or you're bad.
Yeah, I think, the new contract negotiations that are going on may have huge ramifications as far as the power structure with baseball. I know they're talking about imposing a salary cap, but that still has to play out. The major factor about the consistency and the predictability as far as baseball goes year in and year out is the fact that there's 162 games. And
Right.
The bigger the sample size, the cream is going to rise to the top, as to use a cliche. So, and these guys are getting, 400 or 500 at bats. The pitchers are going out there 30 plus times. So you just kind of know what you have. It's not like football, where there's only 16 regular season games. played with a oddly shaped ball.
Right.
Weird stuff is going to happen. There's only like 60 plays a game for each side in football. So with baseball, yeah, you're going to have more consistency year in and year out. You're going to know what to expect from certain players. There may be a few here and there that have 1 year spikes, but for the most part, you're going to know what you have.
Right.
And it's so statistics driven, and they just have so much data. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. I'm a little surprised the Braves are so high. I know they had a good start. They have some young guys. Acuna is one of my faves. But they're really young. I'm just surprised they're that high. I don't know if the NL is just that weak. But yeah, I'm surprised they're that high. That's kind of my main takeaway. I'm also surprised that the Twins are so high on here. I know that they're pretty. They got a good squad, but it's just a little surprising to see.
Yeah.
So we already kind of hinted at it. The MLB is going to be a little different this year. So it was just announced last week that there's going to be a 60-game season starting on July 23rd and July 24th. The playoff structure remains unchanged. There's no expanded playoffs, unfortunately. Players are going to report soon. I believe, what is it? Thursday on the 1st of July?
Like that.
Oh, by the way, let us be among the very first to wish you a very happy and safe 4th of July. Shout out to Chris Berman, who would always wish everybody happy holidays like 3 weeks in advance. We need to make that a regular running gag here on the mixer. They're going to release the operating manual, which I guess they kind of already did as far as how they're going to handle the COVID situation. The players are probably going to file a grievance because of the money they lost. However, I think they're getting a prorated salary, so the owners may not be on the hook for as much as we had initially thought. The games are going to be played in their home stadiums, and but they can be moved. It sounds like whether or not fans attend is going to be up to the individual local governments. I don't know if you heard this, but the Astros owner, is just going full villain mode, and was quoted saying that they had lost money because they didn't play the first half of the season, and that the only way to make that up is by filling the stadium and selling beer and hot dogs. So Houston, where there's probably the worst outbreak right now, and the owner's just like, YOLO, get butts in those seats and beer in those hands.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I'm a little disappointed he waited till now to go full villain. Why not just do it during the whole cheating scandal? But
yeah,
you got to embrace the villain at some point.
Yeah, it's man, I just keep seeing stuff like that on Twitter with various sports. Especially like college ball. I'm seeing a lot of stuff about like. I saw something from Ohio State saying like, oh, we can have like 40 or 50,000 fans probably and maintain like, a seat or so in between. Right. It's like, what are you thinking right now? But I'm gonna need you, man. I'm gonna need you to keep my hope up and my faith in humanity, because it is going down. It is yeah. Anyway, it's just the disconnect with some people, and the importance of public health is just we live in a capitalist uh, government. So I guess in some sense it's understandable, but it's it's somewhat,
Disappointing.
yeah, it's disappointing, depressing, all of that. However, we're gonna keep it real here at the Mixer, and bring that up, bring that to attention when time calls for it, but try to keep it on sports for the most part. Um, so as far as the health, the operating manual, this is the details we have so far. They're going to be doing testing every other day, so the players have to get tested every other day. If there's a positive test, they have to test negative twice before they can return. That's pretty standard. I didn't see anything about them having to be on like a 14-day,
Hold
yeah,
or whatever.
14-day hold or anything like that. They just have to test negative twice. I guess it's kind of implied that it'll be at least 14 days. That's just the nature of the virus, it seems. But they
Right.
have to test negative twice, and they're tested every other day. They have to do 2 temperature checks per day. Um, some format changes to kind of help out with the shortened season. The NL is going to have the DH, so that's going to be good to see. So there'll be potentially 15 more uh hitting
People
spots.
available.
Yeah. So maybe Will Myers doesn't have to play in the field, and the pods might win a game and a half extra because White Kesso's not getting bored out at first base. Is Ricky Henderson still available?
Oh my god.
Is he still playing for the Surf Dogs? He could get out there, smack some singles and steal some bases. I'm sure he'd be better than some people in base.
I'm sure.
They expanded the rosters. I think that they're going to break camp with a 30-man roster, 30 plus just slightly, and then by like halfway through the season, I know there's like a cutoff point. I think maybe at the quarter mark it's going to go down to 29, and then halfway through the season it's going to be at 26, so an extra spot.
Yeah.
There's going to be a special injury list for players that test positive for the virus, um, and to the chagrin of some Florida women, there will be no spitting in baseball. So
Yeah.
God's great respiratory gift will be restricted. There will be no spitting in baseball. No handshakes, I guess. No mound visits or something like that.
Oh,
What's gonna happen? What if somebody hits a walk off? Is there gonna be no bounce at the home plate?
I guess not.
I need my bounces, Jeff. I need my bounces. Um, so yeah, what stands out to you with the MLB's coronavirus plans, in just this altered schedule in general? Oh, I forgot to mention, trade deadline moved back a month at the end of August.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they got something they've been trying to do for a while in moving the DH over to the National League. Um, I would be surprised if that doesn't just stay, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, they've been talking about it for a while. I'm gonna
Yeah,
That's gonna be interesting. There's probably a lot of traditionalists that are gonna be upset by that, but it's yeah, I am gonna miss the one-offs with the pitchers hitting dingers. Whenever Bumgarner would hit a home run, that was awesome. And then like Bumgarner having better slugging percentages than like some
yeah,
some other pretty good hitters was. I love those stats. So that's gonna be that's gonna be a bummer. Um,
yeah. But I mean, overall, like with baseball getting more and more specialized, it just makes sense, right?
yeah.
Like pitchers don't practice hitting at all.
Hmm.
Like you got, you know, even in high school at this point, sometimes guys don't even hit at all, right?
Oh,
So it's hard to expect guys to like start hitting again when they become pros. So I think just take the bats out of their hands. We don't have to worry about it. More runs, it usually equates to more runs. Like the AL usually scores more runs than the NL every year.
Right.
because they get an extra batter basically.
Yeah.
Um,
It almost puts the NL at a disadvantage.
yeah. So, I think there's that. It'll create longer careers for a couple players, right? It
Yeah.
opens up more slots for players. The Padres are probably a little disappointed they traded Franmil last year,
Right. Right.
because he's like the perfect DH.
Right.
But it is what it is. I think that the expanded rosters make sense. I don't know why you would cut it down at all during the season. But whatever. And then I don't know. It'll be interesting. A 60-game baseball season feels weird.
Yeah. And part of that structure, I forgot to mention, is each team will play the team in their division 10 times, and then they will play interleague games against their AL counterparts. So the NL West plays the AL West,
Okay.
NL Central plays AL Central, and then I think they play like a 5 game against each team, to kind of cut down on the travel.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, uh, they would play against their like crosstown rivals, I think,
Yeah.
on series.
Okay.
So everybody who's worried out there, Padre fans, the Vetter Cup is very much still in play. That bitter rivalry between the Padres and Mariners that three bros in PB, I'm sure are stoked for. And everybody in Seattle is like, the what? The wait, Eddie Vedder has San Diego roots? Like they probably have no freaking idea. They're like, I thought the Vedder Cup was with Chicago.
So true.
Yeah. So yeah. Hopefully, that itch is scratched. Um, I am somewhat intrigued by this. My one of my biggest barriers to really enjoying baseball is just each game just doesn't seem that important to me because there's so many,
Yeah.
and the Padres lose so many of them. With the games, with fewer games, it's going to be, I don't know, it's not really going to feel like a playoffs, but um, I mean, I guess it's almost like a play-in tournament, this 60-game thing.
Right.
So I expect the players to go hard. I hope that the virus doesn't wipe out some teams. We already have some um, you know some outbreaks on some sports teams. There was the women's soccer pro league. There's a team in Orlando. I think it's like the Orlando Pride, or that's their MLS team. But
Yeah.
I think the women's team might have the same name. Um, there was some outbreak and they had to withdraw from some tournament
Oh yeah.
completely because they had an outbreak. We have four. I know there's at least four professional players, MLBers, that aren't going to participate in the MLB season, because of COVID concerns. Ian Desmond, um, he's one of the four, but his withdrawal seemed to be more related to kind of the civil rights movement that's going on, and he wants to do stuff for children. There's he had I don't know if they were tweets or on Instagram or whatever, but I recommend reading what he had to say. I considered reading through it here, but it's like 5 pages, so it's
Yeah.
kind of long, but it's about how playing through Little League, as a black, well, he's mixed, but he's half black, how that influenced him growing up, and was an outlet for him, and how he wants to invest in the youth to
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know, just to improve the country in the way that he can. So it was inspiring to read. So I recommend reading through that if you can. Um, so I'm excited but nervous about this. This schedule moving forward. I hope everybody stays safe. Let's move on to our predictions here.
Okay.
Jeff, who do you have in the World Series? Who are your MVPs, Cy Youngs? What do you see out of the shortened season?
All right. I'm going Yankees versus the I'm gonna say Dodgers.
Okay.
World Series. I think MVP. I'm gonna go. I think Judge gets off to a hot start and just balls out. That's how the Yankees get there. Cy Young in the AL. I'll go with Garrett Cole as well. He's got a short season. He doesn't have to do it for very long.
Uh-huh.
We saw last year. I know Verlander won it last year, even though Cole was arguably the better pitcher on the team.
Uh-huh.
So I think this year moving to New York, it's a big stage. If they come out of the gates well, and especially if they win the way people think they will, I think you'll have a very good chance of getting it. Just moving to a new team, that whole thing. In the NL, I think it's a little tougher, but I think maybe Strasburg gets a Cy Young. He doesn't have to be healthy all year the way he normally would.
Uh-huh.
Gets a shortened season coming off the World Series. I think he'll go crazy. And then MVP in the NL, I'm going to go with Acuna. I think, dude's good. And I think that, this is the one thing that nobody knows, but in a short season, right, like guys get hot and it doesn't take a whole lot, right?
Right.
I would be surprised, but I also wouldn't if we saw someone hit 400 this year, right? We've seen people do it for half a season before, and that's essentially what this is, right? This isn't even that.
I didn't think about that. Somebody might hit 400.
Yeah, so like,
asterisk.
huh?
I said that'd be a huge asterisk.
Well, yeah, it definitely would. You're playing 100 less games than people normally do, right? But like, I could see it happening. I don't think it'd be, it would definitely be very surprising. But I think if you were going to predict it, this is a year to predict it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. I think Yankees probably win over the Dodgers. I think the teams that have been there are probably going to be there because, they're not having to really learn anything new. They've been at the top. They're not adding a whole lot to their teams. You know what I mean? They're not trying to retool or anything like that.
Yeah.
So the experience is there. And I just think they have an advantage going into this season with the shortened spring training and stuff like that.
Right. All right. So Yankees over Dodgers. I like some of your picks there. So I have the Astros over the Dodgers because why not? I just feel like the Astros are just gonna be like double birds to the world. They won't have to play in front of fans, so they'll have that narrative going for them. The whole chip on their shoulder mentality, and I also would just think it's hilarious if that happens, and would also similarly think it's hilarious if the Dodgers go full on Bills from the '90s and lose 3 straight, title series.
That would be pretty good.
For MVPs, I have Verlander as the AL MVP because that's always the talking point. Will a pitcher be the MVP? I could just see him doing that in a shortened season. I have Yelich, Sexy Yelly, winning it in the NL. I can see him getting hot and making a mark there. There's like 2 different trains of thoughts, it seems like, from the analysts I hear. I hear that the hitters are going to be off because of the long off season. Then I also hear that the pitchers aren't going to be ready because of the long off season. So it's like maybe it just balances out and it's normal. But I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that. I guess I'm still waiting to develop my thoughts on if there's going to be an imbalance between between the two, because it seems like at the start of the season the pitching is better than the hitting, and then as the season goes on, the hitting kind of catches up to the pitching as the pitching wears down. So I
Yeah.
mean, to me, it feels like the pitching is going to be sharper because everybody's arm's going to be rested and fresher, and the batting's going to be off because they just haven't had the the at bats. They haven't.
Right.
So I don't know. An analyst I heard that I respect thought it was going to be the other way around, that the pitchers aren't going to be warmed up. So I don't know. We won't know until we see it. As far as Cy Youngs, I have Verlander winning the Cy Young in the AL. It'd be kind of weird if he didn't, if he won the MVP. And then I feel like you copied my notes because I have Strasburg winning the NL, winning in the NL with kind of the same, ditto, less games, won't be on an inning restriction. He could catch fire and yeah, have maybe one of his best years ever. But yeah, so that is baseball. We'll have some Gauntlet events. Hopefully, we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, that'll be tough.
Because we usually do the All-Star game. We do, celebrity softball game. That's always fun. Home run derby. That's always fun. And yeah, All-Star game in general. Baseball probably has the best All-Star break.
Yeah.
And not gonna have that this year. So we'll have to figure it out. Maybe we can do a playoff tournament. Maybe we'll just do a DraftKings playoff league. That might be fun. But yeah, we'll come up with a Gauntlet event. Let's tie it all together so you guys can get in on it. But that wraps up baseball. Episode 3 is in the books. Jeff, anything to add before we skedaddle and get to basketball?
I don't actually.
All right, so that is it for now. I'm going to end this one, Jeff, and we will be right back. Thank you all. Yeah, that's it. See you guys.
See ya.